Hello, Facebook friends. It's so good to be connecting with you today. So many of you have been reading my posts and sharing them with people you know and in your communities, and my heart is so full with gratitude. Thank you so much for spreading the word. The reason why I put this information out there is because so many people are struggling, and I feel that it's part of my mission to educate, empower, and inspire anyone who's struggling on this path of loss and wants to find a better way to live. Whereas I'm speaking a lot about grief and loss and what happens in our body, our mind, our spirit when we lose a loved one or a job or a home, or we feel a sense of lack of purpose or direction in our lives, or we are diagnosed with a chronic illness. I've been speaking a lot about what to do and how to move through this space of grief. But I also want to speak about my relationship with the divine as I have come to understand it. And I need to start at the very beginning. I need to tell you what happened so that we can get to where I am today. When I was a little girl, I had this sense that God was a loving entity. I don't know how I knew it, I just knew it. That God was a loving, caring, deeply connected entity. But that was not the message I was getting from the religion I was born into. I was born and raised in India, where I lived for 44 years. So I was born and raised Hindu. And the messages I was getting from my elders, my family, the community, is that we needed to do things in order to deserve God's love. And something in me, even as a little child, knew that that was not the truth. Some part of me rebelled against the idea that I had to do something. I had to get to a place of worthiness in order to be loved by God. Something about that message just did not sit right with me. But that's what people told me. And then there were all these rules. So in the Hindu culture, there are certain days of the week which are considered very auspicious. Fridays are very auspicious. You do things like you go to the temple on a Friday. You do special offerings to the divine on Friday. You spend a lot of time in prayer and meditation on a Friday. So there are special days of the week, and there are all kinds of rules and rituals. There are things you should do. There are things you shouldn't do. There are things you do in a certain way, in a certain sequence. You don't do things out of sequence. And if you do, something bad will happen. So I ended up just being more terrified of God than anything else through my religion. I didn't feel a sense of connection. In fact, I felt, what if I make a mistake? What if I do something wrong? What if I do something I'm not supposed to do? And that just instilled in me a deep fear. As a child, I was also extremely curious. I asked a lot of questions. My husband says I still do. That's just who I am, I guess. I'm a curious learner. I have questions. So as a child, I would say to my mother, to my grandparents, to any adult who was willing to listen, why do we have to do this? Or why do we have to ring the bell 3 times? Why must I wash my hair on a Friday morning? Why do we have to go to the temple and go around the sanctum sanctorum 3 times? Why do we offer food to the gods? I had all kinds of questions, except the adults in my space didn't always have the answers, which left me very confused. The only thing I heard from my mother, and I heard it a lot, was, we didn't ask questions like you. When our elders told us something, we obeyed. We listened. We were not rebellious like you. So please stop asking questions and just do as you're told. Well, that was not very comforting for me. So I just decided that if I didn't get the answers, I wasn't going to obey. I was just one of those kids that needed answers. I needed to know why we did certain things, why we had to do them in a sequence, why some things were not to be done, etc. And when I didn't get the answers I was looking for, I said, you know what? None of this sounds right to me. I don't want to embrace it. So I was considered a very rebellious child in my family, and that caused my parents a lot of grief. But anyway, as I grew older, the questions just got more complex, right? The other thing I noticed in my family, in my community, was that many of the adults did everything they were supposed to do. Like they got it right, they did all the rules and they observed everything and they performed all the rituals. But I still saw people gossip. I saw people talk behind other people's back. I saw them being um, well, mean is an extreme word. I'm going to say not very kind with others who are not of a similar station. I saw all of this behind me, and I thought, this is not sitting right with me. Something about all of this is wrong, except I didn't have the language, the vocabulary, um, or the linear way of thinking as a child to question some of it. I just knew it was wrong. I didn't know why it was wrong. So, long story short, because I saw so much dissonance in the things that people said versus how they behaved and what they modeled for children, I decided that I really didn't want to have very much to do with a God that came up with this rule book, right? Like this manual where you had to do all these things and be all these things. And if you didn't, then you were going to get into trouble. And he was like sitting up there waiting for you to make a mistake. Well, I didn't want to have anything to do with that kind of a God because I was having enough trouble navigating my human life. So it took many years for me to even come to an understanding of God. I instinctively knew that one religion couldn't be better than another. I knew that all religions were like rivers that were leading to the ocean. So nobody was wrong, everybody was right. It was just like, how in India we wore different kinds of clothing. In the Western world, you wear different kinds of clothing, and nobody is wrong, nobody is right. It's just different. And that's how I understood religions to be. Um, so I felt an openness and a curiosity towards all religions. I didn't know much about other religions than the one I was raised in, but I did feel this sense of connection, this sense of oneness. I wanted to know more. I wanted to learn more. I was open and willing to learn. So finally, what really made sense to me and helped me open up to God in a bigger way was AA. So my father went to AA because he was trying to recover from alcoholism. And I just loved the 12 steps in that people in AA practiced. It felt it felt like something completely natural. When they said a God of your understanding, for the first time I realized, oh my gosh, there doesn't have to be one God, the right God, so that we make every other God wrong. There can be something called the God of your understanding. However you understood God was okay, because God lived in your heart. God lives in our heart, right? We can speak to him or her however we choose to identify that entity, and we can feel a sense of individual connection. So it was when my father finally started to go to AA that I found the God of my understanding. Today, I don't use the word God as much as I use the word divine or universal consciousness, but there was a journey. There was definitely a journey from where I was to where I am today. But this is the first part of the story, and I thought I would just share that with you as a way for you to understand where I'm coming from and why today my connection with the divine really informs all my work. Everything that I do is informed deeply by my connection with the divine. But it wasn't overnight. It wasn't like flipping a switch. I didn't always feel this love and connection. It was definitely a journey. And when I was a little kid, I had to totally break up with God and question why he had to be harsh and punish, and why he was just sitting there with a rule book watching when we just moved away from the path that we were meant to follow. Because to me, God, as I understood the entity even as a little child, was loving and kind and all encompassing, didn't differentiate, always demonstrated oneness. But that's not what I heard. And so I had to travel that journey. which has brought me to where I am today. So in the next part of this video, because we could sit here and talk for an hour, and I would still not be finished. So in the next part of this video, I will talk more about the next part of my journey, my teenage years and then my early adulthood, which is when I started getting introduced to AA through my father, and how that resonated deeply with me. So watch for that video, and if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and share it. Share it with someone you know who's struggling with this question of, why does God take away our loved ones? Why do we suffer so much? Why do little children die? And these are really, really big questions. Not that I have simple, pat answers for all of them, but my hope is that by sharing my journey with you, I will help you open up to some of the answers that you carry within yourselves, because it is my belief that we all as souls have our own answers, but it is up to us to say, I'm willing, I'm ready, I open to what I'm carrying within me. So that is my intention here. So watch for the next part of the video where I'll talk about my next chapter, so to speak, on this journey with God. Thank you for watching, and I hope you'll share this video if you enjoyed it.